Welcome to Made for Mondays, the source for digging a little deeper into the Believers Church Sunday messages and finding ways to apply them to our daily lives. Together, let's take a deeper look and find a way to bring Mondays back to life.
Hey everybody, welcome to the pod. My name is Heather, and who's with me today?
Hi there, Heather. It's me, Jamie.
It's me, Doug.
And me, Rochelle.
It's just
I
like
feel
yesterday.
like this is like
It is.
deja vu or something.
Except Doug is not wearing the same
I was this
clothes.
close
I
to wearing the same
know.
clothes.
Doug, you lied.
I was going to
the
do
whole
it,
church.
and then I remember
50% of the church,
I
because
know.
there was only one service.
Yeah.
it was. I remember Jamie said it last thing. He's like, "Change your clothes." I was like, "Oh yeah, he did. He told me to change my clothes, so I should do that."
You're so obedient.
Yeah.
It was good
compliant.
wisdom. I was like, "Oh, that is that godly wisdom." I gotta change my clothes.
Yeah, it comes with age.
Yeah, they smelled real bad. We were doing a lot of setting up yesterday, like tables and chairs. So I was like sweating in my shirt profusely. So it probably smelled horrible.
Profusely.
Yeah, it was a
I mean,
lot
it
of
was
sweat.
hot outside yesterday.
When I got done, it was just like dripping. I blame it on the Murrays. I think Murray's that collects it in my hair. So if I shake like that, it's just like
Yeah.
a waterfall. It's
oh
horrible.
my gosh, it keeps it from soaking in. It's just,
It is, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
It
hilarious.
repels the water.
Like a duck.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Well, yesterday was Father's Day, so we'll
Yeah.
start with you guys. Did you do anything fun to celebrate over the weekend?
Well, on Father's Day, yesterday, we had everyone over for lunch. And when I say everyone, I just mean
Your kids?
our kids and our granddaughter. So, yeah, it's not that many people.
Yeah.
But had a really nice time and had blackened fish tacos.
Oh, nice.
Bonnie made all kinds of great stuff that went along with it. It was really good. It was very, very good meal. Nice time hanging out.
Good.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's
Very
cool.
good. Doug?
So we went out and had lunch afterwards, after church, and had a good time. And the kids got me some gifts for Father's Day that are all like yard games. So we set up like badminton
fun.
and this like portable soccer goal, and we were just playing yard stuff all day.
Fun.
It was
Where'd
super
you go
fun.
for lunch?
La Paria. It's like my favorite restaurant.
That's a good place.
Yeah, it's so
Very
good.
good.
We always get the tacos a la Paria. It's very good.
What does that mean?
They're just tacos that they sell at La Paria. But it's really good. So it's like
Very creative.
I know. It's like 3 tacos, and you can choose what meat you want it, or anything in it, like vegetables in there too if you want.
Okay.
But they have this really good, like real spicy sauce that comes with it. And I haven't seen that with any other dish. So I don't know if it's like special for this one dish, but it's very spicy and it's very good.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Doug do be liking some spicy
Yeah.
stuff.
It's the kind of spicy, if you eat too much, if you eat too big of a bite, you're going to choke.
Okay.
And it's
Which is your goal.
yeah, it's like if you're not in pain, it's not spicy enough. If you're not like threatening some sort of like death, it's not. Yeah,
Yeah.
it should be spicier.
Yeah. Rochelle,
Nice.
what did you guys do this weekend?
Oh, this weekend.
Yeah.
It was so full. So Friday night we had date night and we went to a concert in downtown Norfolk. They do the summer concert series and saw the Fuzz Band. That was my first time seeing them. Super fun. And then Saturday, Jerry and I are coaching Ty and Kai's basketball team because there was no
really?
coach.
Fun.
That's awesome.
It was the most fun because I don't know anything about basketball.
Okay.
I love to watch it. It's my favorite sport to watch. I get real hype. You guys know this about me watching my nephew. But Jerry knows the skill part and I do the kid part. And
Yeah.
it was just hilarious. We got some kids that I'm excited to watch develop because,
So is this just starting?
yeah, it was our
Okay.
first.
Oh,
our
wow.
And
first.
tell our listeners how old these children are.
Yes, they are 3, 4, and 5.
That's awesome.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Trying to
so-
organize them into a team sport? Yikes.
Hilarious. It was a lot of, Jerry would be like, I would turn around and half the team was gone and I have them on the side and I'm like, it's okay. You don't have to be in your mom's lap. It's okay. You can have a drink of water.
You call that hilarious. I would call that madness.
mad.
Yes. I would not be able to do that.
Oh man, I
for
loved
you.
it. Yeah, so we're doing our coaching and then we got to spend the day at the pool at my sister's place. It was her 40th birthday celebration, so that was really fun. And then yesterday we set up, I call them private cabanas, they're beach tents, but we set up these tents on the beach and did, for all the dads in our family, beach golf. It was so fun.
How do you play beach golf?
We made a bunch of flag poles and like 9 holes and put them all around and dug out holes and put in these little bowls for the balls to go in and brought some clubs out there and swam
Fun.
and putted around.
awesome.
It was so fun.
Oh, very cool. We went to our kids took Nate to Back Bay Brewery on Saturday because they were having a dad joke competition.
Oh, no way.
I saw Sarah showed me the video of Nate telling the joke.
So Nate participated in this thing because he didn't know that that's what was happening. But when we got there, they told him, and he was very hype about
So
it.
he was all about it.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
So as we were walking up, he the first thing he did was get in line to tell his first joke.
Did he tell more than one?
He told 3.
Nice.
And he ended up winning.
Did he?
Oh, no
Yes.
way. That's awesome.
Congratulations, Nate.
Yes.
Nathan, way to go.
So they were very excited that he was so excited.
Yeah, I'm excited for him.
Yeah, and then he won.
So what did he win?
A gift card to there.
Oh,
Nice.
nice.
That's
Which he
awesome.
then gave to Spencer to help with the bill. So,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, that sounds
Very
about right.
good, yeah. So that was very fun. And then we went to this restaurant in Virginia Beach called the Pink Dinghy, which is a very small little restaurant that was so delicious.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very fun. So that was our Saturday celebrating Nate. It was a lot of, just a good time.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. And then yesterday we just sat outside and enjoyed the beautiful weather and sat by the pool and
Nice.
good. Yeah. And Nate watched all of the golf.
Oh, yeah, it was a golf weekend.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Do you remember the joke that won the competition? The dad joke?
well, I think it was a collective that they just so enjoyed all of his jokes. He's told, I will ruin all of the jokes, but one of his favorite jokes to tell is about a penguin who walks into the bar and asks the bartender if he's seen his brother, and the bartender asks what he looks like.
Okay.
That's the joke.
That's
That's the joke.
Yeah. Some people don't get it right away. And Spencer's favorite thing is to say, like, they'll get it later.
Yeah. You have to think
Takes
about that
a
one
minute.
for a while.
Yeah.
It'll
That's funny.
settle
That's
in.
good.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was a good time.
yeah. The one I saw was about the traffic light. And it was great.
It's
I
about.
don't-
It's
why
about
is the light red all
right.
the time? You'd be red too if you changed in the middle of an intersection.
That's good.
Yes.
Oh, that's a good one.
yeah, that was good.
And then the other one was about.
Sorry, Nate, if I didn't tell it quite
Yeah,
right.
the other one was about, like, he says, ask me if I like what I think about big clocks or something, and then it's, I like them big time. Yeah.
Wondering where that was.
Yeah.
I'm so nervous.
I know. It's like,
Yeah. Apparently, Spencer was, like, standing up beside the guys who were judging the competition,
yeah.
and the one guy just, like, was really digging Nate's.
That's so good.
Like, even how Nate just
Yeah, his whole
delivers the
persona,
jokes
right,
and
yeah.
stuff. And so he heard this guy tell another guy, like, I want to give this guy all 3 of the awards.
Yeah.
And so when he was done telling the one joke, Nate and Spencer were walking inside, and the guy tells Nate, buddy, you should stick around. I'm pretty sure you're going to be winning one of these.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a good time.
That's amazing too, because like he didn't know about this ahead of time, so it's not
No.
like he was prepping these
No,
jokes for
no,
weeks.
he
Nate's
has
always
them
on
on
the
deck.
ready.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a true test of dad jokes.
Yeah.
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 Very
Yeah.
good. That's fun.
So, and it was fun because we were talking about it last night, and I was just like, the kids were so excited about it because it was a total, that was like a Nate,
yeah.
perfect Nate event.
Yeah, that's so fun.
Yeah, it was a good time. All right, well, we have a lot of questions
We
to
do.
get to, so I know we usually have some other segments on the podcast, but we just have so
need to
much
get
to
going.
get to, and you have other things to do
Yeah.
today.
I got things to do.
Very busy.
Right.
Very, very busy. So we are going to forego other things, and we're just
Okay.
going to get right to it.
Thanks.
All right.
Let's also give one-word answers.
No. Chill out, will you please?
Or just like a reference. Here's the verse you can look up.
Just
to
be kind of
find.
fun.
Right.
Yeah.
A new thing.
Right.
Yeah. Don't do it. Yes, do it.
Yesterday, we wrapped up this really great series that
Yes.
we've been in, the Family Issues series. And so because we are going to take a second
Yeah.
to just sit in this series for a second. And do you guys have any just comments that you'd like to say about the series and how it went before we get into some of the other questions that have been asked? Because I have found it to be so helpful and just relevant to even so many things that I feel like I'm right in the middle of in my own life. But yeah, any thoughts just on the series, how it went as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, same as you. I've had so many people come up to me and say, like right after this message, this happened in our family, and like it's been so relatable to so many, and partly just because of how we structured it by doing the survey and getting the feedback. So like, yeah, it was hard not to see your family somewhere in all of this. So I think it just made it really good.
Yeah. I think I realized that there are things happening in my life that I didn't really know ahead of time. So kind of like what you said, like there are things going on that when I heard somebody talk about it, like the adult children, like things that are going to happen that I'm not really concerned about right now because my kids aren't there, but they will be there soon. So it gave me a space to learn something that I didn't know that I needed. And I think a lot of families probably felt the same way.
Yeah,
there are things happening that I am unaware of, but hearing somebody talk about it has brought me into like an appreciation of whatever that thing could be.
Yeah.
So just that was really helpful for my family.
Right.
And I'm hoping other families as well.
Yeah.
That's good.
I've loved to witness the engagement that it is encouraged. I know especially yesterday and really every week I've had conversations with families after and they were like, hey, I really want to move forward and work on this issue. Like I need help. We are facing this. And to be able to see folks say like I can get help through my church community and allow us to just do life with them has been incredible.
Yeah. I have really appreciated each week whoever's been teaching has done such a good job with whatever the topic is about making it really relevant to people who aren't even in that season necessarily.
Yeah.
So really pulling out stuff that's like, okay, maybe you're not like single, but also making it very relevant to the person who's not single.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're not like in the middle of having children that are like very young and you're not in the busyness of that, but you're like busy in other ways. And so you're like able to make that very applicable to someone else's life. So it's been the teaching team, you guys have done also a really good job of doing that too. So thank you for that. So we're just going to kind of do a quick fire sort of question and response thing here with some of so it might feel a little broken as we go through these, but these are just some of the other questions that we didn't get to throughout the series. So we're going to start off with one of the categories that we asked was just the biggest issue our family is currently facing. So one of the questions that we didn't get to was sibling rivalry and generational brokenness. So how do we get to a place of restoration? And I think that's something that, we did get a lot of questions around that it seemed like it was coming in through because we had people fill out and just kind of tell us their own age demographic. And it was from like in that 40s and up. So these are people that are having these sibling rivalries kind of in these later stages of life so they're struggling with their sibling relationships. And there seems to be this longing to have a healthy relationship with their siblings, but something just is perpetually carrying on through their family that is not allowing that to happen. So have you experienced that? Do you have any advice for how they can seek out restoring generational brokenness?
Yeah, I mean, that's so tough. I had a conversation yesterday with someone that a sibling there's a tremendous strain because of the aging parent thing and the dynamics that are at play with that. So a lot of times there's other factors that are playing into all of that stuff. Even in my own family, there's like some addiction type stuff that has deeply affected some sibling stuff even in my own dynamic in family. And it's just really it's really tough. And one of the themes of yesterday, I think, was it's impossible to fix someone else, so the only thing that you can really do is engage the best way that you can and in the healthiest way that you can. Doug, yesterday, that passage that you shared,
Colossians.
that was so good. You could do a whole message.
Yeah.
I loved your insights on that. It was just so helpful. But the first half of that verse was the ideal friend, and then the second half was make allowances for when they don't measure up to that ideal.
Yeah.
And we have to do that with everyone, including the sibling thing, which is so hard because there's so many different dynamics pulling at you in the family relationship that aren't necessarily present in other relationships.
Yeah. I think this is a theme that I saw a lot yesterday, and I always say I think we should actually teach this in school, but like setting those boundaries is super important because I know in my life there have been different seasons where even though my family in general, I'm pretty close with my siblings, there have been seasons where we had to set some strong boundaries with each other because I was wanting to step into or out of something, or they were wanting to step into or out of something that we were dealing with generationally, and we still wanted to maintain the health of the relationship. So we would say, this is the capacity in which I can interact with you and spend time with you right now, so that it's in a place where we're loving and we're meeting each other well. And then we just really we either did the other stuff, the other conversations that were tough in a mediated space where someone else could help us walk through that, or we didn't have the conversation and in that time when it was like a hot topic. But I just think with so many of the things that we've been talking about, we've got to get in a space where we are healthy enough to set the healthy boundaries so that we're loving each other really well.
Yeah, that's good. It's weird because, like, have you ever heard somebody say, like, somebody in their family was the glue that held everybody together? Yeah. So, like, a parent or a grandparent. And I've seen this happen in my family. Like, when that person passes away, the family splinters because there's no more glue, right? Yeah. So I think you have to find that common ground, that thing that brings people together. In a lot of families, it's a person. We go to grandma's house because we all unite together under this one house, or there's one person who's like really hospitable. To find that common ground that brings people together again, even if it's something as simple as like we have kids that are the same age, or we're interested in the same kind of purposes in life, or hopefully if it's faith, like, our faith in Jesus unites us in that. If the family can find that common ground, it's a good starting point at least to start building some of those conversations, and I guess finding that help in that sense too. Yeah. And that could be really tough if your common ground is a person, and they're no longer part of the family. What is there that brings you back together? And that could be really tough.
Yeah. I think another thing is, and this goes back to kind of that conversation around like defining the relationship that we talked about, even with the parenting funnel. So maybe if you're not in that, like, the older stage of this where you're trying to gain you're trying to restore generational brokenness, but like if you're in this early stage of life where you're raising up children, and to like teach the importance of how to love siblings well to your, to your kids. I think that's like one of those things that you can just be building into your family dynamic, and just having those define the relationship kind of conversations with your kids early on to like teach them like who they are and how to respect one another, and the importance and the value of like building that into their character and why they do that, and those kinds of things, so that as they get older, and like you're saying, like working through conflict and how we do that in our families, so that as they get older and they're dealing with these bigger issues that come up in families, that they have tools so that they can do that well. So it's not, because that's another thing that came up in some of these questions is like the family roles and dynamics. It's like, how do we argue well? How do you best approach conflict with someone you care deeply for without breaking their spirit? And that starts at very early ages, so that as we get older, when difficult things come up, we have the tools to be able to do that. All right, another big area of questions was parenting and blended families. So one of the questions was, how do you balance the responsibilities of parenting while prioritizing the relationship with your spouse? So any comments on that? And I think where this is coming from is like, sometimes, depending on the stages of life we're in, that parenting season, it's probably like with younger kids or in those, even in the middle school, teenage years, you can feel like all of your energy is going into parenting and you lose the like, oh yeah, I'm also married.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, how do you stay connected to your partner if you feel like all of your energy is going to your kids?
Yeah, I mean, different seasons of raising kids require more of you as a parent. And so, I remember when our kids were younger, ours weren't, we didn't have kids who were engaged in sports, but I did have a kid that was in the School of the Arts. And so it required all kinds of shuttling and all the time in the car and all the stuff. And it was a lot. But we did always make a priority of, we would set, speaking of boundaries, like we would only let our kids choose an activity that was extracurricular. Because more than that just drove our family too hard. So between church engagement and one activity outside of school, that's a pretty full plate for most families. And if you have more than a couple of kids, like it just gets exponentially more complicated. So I do, we talk about this relatively frequently, taking things off of your calendar to maintain health. And I think that's part of it, like putting on your calendar a date night with your spouse, and taking things off of, don't allow your kids' schedule to dictate everything that happens in your home. Like try to have some exercise, some control over that. And there's a lot of tension with that for sure. But you have to manage that tension or you will end up with your kids gone and you're living with a stranger.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not a spouse, but I've had to do a ton of balancing just because I had 4 kids when I started dating the man I'm dating now. So there was so much I had to do to even get to know him in a way where like we had time or I could go on dates. So one of the things that was super helpful for me was I had to set clear expectations first. I had to be like, look, this is what's on my plate right now. And so we started that off really early with like, this is what's going on. This is what was going on in his world. And we have a working calendar where we know like what we can do, when we can have dates, all of that stuff. And then making sure that we're always going back to the drawing board. I think that's a big thing that I have noticed just watching how, my other friends who are married do it. And then I'm taking that into my relationship now with Jerry is just like, life changes and seasons change, jobs have changed, schedules have changed, but we're always going back. We're not trying to force something to keep happening. So we're always going back to say, okay, how can we still date each other well, even in the busyness of what our lives are with these
so good,
wonderful kiddos.
Yep, that's so good.
Yeah, and I think too, it's like if you don't have a lot of time with the other person, making sure that what little time you have is super quality time.
Yeah.
So like even just like looking at your family, like do you know your family's love language? Do you know, what they appreciate the most? Yeah. And I think a lot of times we spend time with people, but maybe it's not quality just because we don't really know what the other person is looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
And we don't know what connects with them. So I can spend a ton of time with Rachel, but if it's not really like what kind of motivates her and drives her, then it's going to be wasted time.
Right.
Yeah.
And same with kids.
Yeah.
I can think that I'm spending quality time with my son Ransom, but if it's not where he's at, then it's just like, man, this is boring and this is a waste of time.
Yeah.
So even just reevaluating as your kids get older and as you and your spouse, get older in relationship as well, reevaluate where everybody is and what your giftings are and what your love languages are to make sure that
So
time
good.
is like super quality.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. How do you co-parent when the home environments are completely opposite?
Yeah, so this is blended family question. That would be so difficult that I can't imagine navigating that. So if you're in the midst of that, first off, just know that that's just super challenging. And I guess part of my response to that would be like if the home environments are just so very different, it depends a little bit on your relationship with your former spouse. Can you have a meeting to talk about goals of parenting? Because certainly some of those goals would be similar. So like they don't have to, like the other home doesn't necessarily have to function exactly the same way your home functions. I think that's the other thing. Like you don't have to try to control what that environment is. But maybe the better thing to do would be to talk about what are our goals for our kids. And if we can agree on what those goals are, then maybe we can navigate having two different environments that are still pointing our kids in the same direction. So like I would encourage you to be able to sit down and have a parent meeting. You're still parents, even if you're not spouses, and talk through the values that you have, the goals that you have, and try to reach some agreement. If you can agree on that, it may look different in each home, but they're going to end up at the same place.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And even like looking at it from what's best for our kids, like you were saying, if it's something like, well, like when I'm with mom, I'm going to go to next gen students, but when I'm with dad, I can't do that. To look at like what's best for the student. Is the student attending this event, and are they being enriched as a person? Is it helping them to be more kind and loving? Do you see a change in this kid's life? Mm-hmm. If so, then it would make sense for somebody who's a believer, but even somebody who's not a believer, to allow their student to attend this like event. If they see like a visible change in their kid's life, I've seen parents who do not know Jesus, but they love what we're doing here because they see their kids and their students really becoming like kind and generous and people who love others in a way. Mm-hmm. So even that, like, is this what's best for my kid?
Yeah.
And if their kids aren't seeing that change, then maybe for us as a ministry, we can do better at reaching out to everybody and being that person, that ministry for that student as well.
Yeah.
I think also, I was telling Jeremy last week, I have co-parented with the city of Norfolk. And one of the things that I think they did a great job of preparing us for, even in our training, was that kids they're going to be in different environments, regardless of if it is their bio family's environment, group home environment, your environment, and everything we have to pour into them when they are with us in our spaces is fine. So even if you're in a situation where you can't have that conversation and get some common ground, your kid is going to, it's okay to set the expectation that they honor the boundaries and the rhythms and values of the home that they are in, because that's how life is. We have to do that. Mm-hmm. You know, I have certain values I have to honor at work, and thankfully they're very close to the ones I also have at home. But then I might go to someone else's home or culture or go on a missions trip, and we have to learn to respect and honor the spaces that we're in. So we're also able to build that skill when we're co-parenting in our kids. And so that's like a thing we can also celebrate. And when they get older, you know, we have to trust like what we put in them, and they will make choices sort of which dynamic or they would want to create in their own home. But I think that we have way more influence when they're with us than we realize.
Right.
That's good.
That's really good. So when a parent remarries, does the new spouse now come before their already existing children from the previous marriage in every situation?
Could you read that one more time?
When a parent remarries, does the new spouse now come before their already existing children from the previous marriage in every situation?
Man, there's so many dynamics that would influence how I would respond to that.
Yeah.
So, like when my when my mom remarried, I was in high school. Mm-hmm. And so my stepfather never tried to be a father figure to me. He was my mom's husband. And I never saw him interject parenting into our relationship. And yet, because he was such an amazing guy, I viewed him very much as a father figure, even though he never tried to put himself in that space. So like in that dynamic, I would say, no, it wouldn't make any sense for that spouse to be the priority over the existing, like I was already pretty much an adult,
right,
you know?
Right.
So like in that dynamic, it's very different. Anytime I hear a question with every time or a word like that, my answer is like almost never, like that's just too broad. So yeah, I mean, it just changes so much when the kids are younger and all that. That's a tough dynamic. And, I would say,
it's the challenge of the blended family.
It is the challenge of the blended family. And I can't speak to it because from experience, I certainly can't speak to it. I would say like there is something to be said for, you were called by God to be a parent, before you remarried. You already had that calling as a parent. So it certainly has to be a very high priority, that parenting role. And how you navigate that well, I'm not sure I know.
Yeah. So this is actually something that I kind of wrestled with because I was a parent.
Yes.
And then I started dating, and I was like, well, at what point, like, would that switch where I'm, saying, if he becomes my husband, like what happens? And because I was a parent, I have these kids. And one of the things that was super helpful for me through a lot of prayer was even in the process, which I know we'll talk about this a little later, but in the process of deciding like who would be a good fit to explore this relationship with, I was like, I really want someone who also wants to prioritize the kids. So we're both on mission because we're in a season where our kids are young and we want to prioritize these kids. And that has made it much more smooth. And I think maybe that's a conversation a couple could have is like, wait a minute, what season are we called to right now? And what's going to be best, And so we don't have that dynamic where it's like, you want to do this with the kids, and you're not doing this with me. And it's not what I said, because we know we're parents right now and he's moving into that role with them, sort of.
Yeah.
So
That's cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that if I haven't been in this position, so this is a completely, like, from an outsider perspective, but yeah, if you're in that season, that's a conversation that you would have to be having with a person that's going to be entering into a, like, oh, this mom or this dad I'm going into a ready-made family. Like, there's kids a part of this mix, and so that has to be a conversation that is ongoing through a dating season of, if we continue in this, what is this going to look like? What's the dynamic of that when it comes to parenting? How old are the kids? What is the ex situation? How involved are they? What is, there's just so many things. Yeah. What is the health of that relationship? Like, there's a lot of...
And I mean, we probably all know people where that has not gone well.
Mm-hmm. And then there's some where it goes very well because the health of that is very good. And so, I think there's,
Yeah, so, I mean, just a word, it would be, if if you're moving towards, like, if you're in a season where, like, your marriage, ended and you've got kids and you're trying to be in the dating world again, where that becomes a possibility, just be super intentional and, like, take the time necessary, because I've certainly seen a lot of people who've ended up and haven't laid a good enough foundation, and it really can, because it's so complicated. You already have so many things working against. That's why, second marriages have a higher failure rate than first marriages, because there's so many complicating factors for people who are going into second marriages with kids and all those other dynamics that are at play. So yeah, just take your time, seek out good, like, counseling, premarital counseling, all those kinds of things to really work through, so you know so you have a plan when you're getting into this.
Yeah, and the other question that we had, which I think they really tie together, was how do you overcome the fear of stepping into a role that's shared with a previous spouse and parent? Like, how do you overcome never feeling like you are really part of a family and not being compared?
Yeah.
And so that just ties into it. And I think all of us have been in ministry long enough, and in family ministry, and just our own experiences. My parents divorced, your parents divorced later in life too. And just our experiences is, I think we've seen so many people rush into the next relationship. And sometimes, like, even well-intentioned, like, for themselves, but even for their kids, like, thinking like, oh, but this person is going to come in and is going to help my kids feel better and help them feel like they have another parent that's, like, it's going to be a better parent situation or whatever it is. And just not taking the time to, like, get proper counsel across the board for some healing and for some space and processing for all parties before diving into another relationship that we all know relationships are hard work. Like, back to the verse that you shared yesterday, like, making allowances for one another's faults and having room for that kind of stuff. And just allowing ourselves to, like, know who we are and who we need to be in relationship with, and the seasons of life that we're in, the seasons of life that our kids are in at different ages, and what they do need and who they need to be a part of those times that they're in, and being able to have good, productive conversations with the people that we're going to allow into those spaces. So I think, the answers to both of these questions is can you have good communication, whether it's with the exes or the new people, and can everybody be on the same page? Because that's going to make all of the difference in how you can move forward.
That's good. Yeah, and it's, like, tons of grace and empathy. I know, like, even when I got married, stepping into this other family with my in-laws was difficult.
Yeah.
So there's so many tension points in that. Like, now I have a brother-in-law and I have a father and mother-in-law, but, like, to step into that family and to be treated as if I'm one of their sons or their brother, it takes time and it takes a lot of trust. And for the person who's stepping into the family that's already kind of made, man, it's such a difficult step to take. Even the way the question was worded, to feel like you're not being compared to somebody else, that alone is, like, overwhelming. Always is in the back of your mind, I'm being compared to the guy who was here before. So that alone just takes so much to be overcome.
Right.
So the person stepping into it, just to take time to build trust and to put yourself out there and to build the relationships, but for the family itself, just to have tons of patience and grace for that, because it's such a tough transition.
Yeah.
And again, I've never been through that.
Right.
But I have seen the difficulties of being welcomed into a family that's not your, like, native family in a sense. It can be really tough.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
It's weird because I've never heard of tensions with in-laws.
Yeah, you got that down. Down pat.
Never heard of that.
All right, so our next big topic was singleness and dating. And this was our teaser question from yesterday, it's important that we answer this one. So the question is, I want to meet someone that shares my values, but I'm not having much luck. During the singleness week, online dating was mentioned. Can you talk about that a little bit more? Rochelle?
Yeah, online dating.
Miss
I think I'm the
Rochelle.
only one who's online dated.
Yes,
That
ma'am.
wasn't a
I
thing.
married at 19. That was not a thing.
I know people very close to me that have had
I
success
met my
through it.
husband when I was 8. There was not online
I
dating.
love it. Oh my goodness.
No
yeah.
internet when we were
No
starting
internet.
either, yeah.
Yes. So for those of you who don't know, I was divorced. Which I wanted to say this earlier. I have been divorced for like 12 years now. So I was not jumping into another marriage because of all of these things. And it's just now that I'm like, oh, I'm ready to get married again. But yeah, I think it's super important to have that time. But when I was married, that's when online dating started to become a thing. And then so when I got divorced, I was like, what is this? Like figuring out what it was really strange. And I didn't even try it for like 4 or 5 years after my divorce. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll give this a try. So I've had like a love-hate relationship with it because it's a whole interesting world. There's swiping and like catfishing and it's horrible. So it can be hard to even be brave enough to try it out, but it's a lot like any other thing or any other way that you would date or any other way that you would introduce something new into your life. I think we can do it and be very prayerful through it and not do it alone. So I think that's been a big difference for me. For one, I'm like a serial, I would delete the apps. I would like put it on my phone, delete it 2 hours later, put it on my phone, delete it 2 days later. So the fact that I met my current partner through that is incredible because he just caught me in one of those windows where I happen to be like, okay, I'm online right now. But I still, even in that, was doing that with people I trust, let your married friends swipe for you, okay? They will help you make picks, and they've never gotten to do that. So it's a safe way for them to do that. But like letting my friends help me and be like, oh, Rochelle, like, I don't know about this. I don't know about this. And that was super helpful. So it's definitely a thing you can approach with your village. And then as I would meet a person, even being like talking about the first date, I think so many times what can be scary about online dating is you really can get connected with someone that is not a follower of Jesus real fast, someone that is hurtful, that isn't going to be a good partner. It can happen so quickly, which is the whole, energy behind swipe, date. And so I think we have to choose to also take our values of how we want to be treated, how we want to be treasured, how we want to love, and what we want our relationships to look like onto the website or the app that we're using. We don't have to get swooped up in the busyness of it. It's a lot like social media and the digital things that we have. We can use that as a tool to be connected with our families, or we can get put in the whirlwind of the drama of it. So it really is what you make of it. And it's so fun. I know so many of my friends who love Jesus and they met their partners online and it's going great. I met my boyfriend online and it's going great. I did want to speak specifically to this aspect because I think this comes up a lot with online dating, and that is sort of like that mismatched marriage week that we had. And when we're vetting, trying to figure out, like, is this person someone who is going to hold the same faith values that I have? And that was a big thing for me. I really think that when we're doing that, again, there's space that we can have, but there's certain behaviors that you're going to be able to see, okay, maybe this person isn't like working for a church like me, Maybe they're not in full-time ministry, but where are they? Where is their heart at? And that is something that is so crucial, I think, to navigate with people that you trust. Maybe if you have like a Christian therapist, like process that with them, process that with your friends so that you're really able to gauge it. Because it's hard to do, through a screen at first. You're connecting and you're doing it through a screen. So you might already develop these feelings. Then by the time you meet them, you're making excuses already if you haven't gone through that whole process with people that can help you have an outside perspective.
Yeah.
That's good.
Very good.
Very helpful.
Yeah. My brother-in-law and my sister, they're not the ones together, but individually, my brother-in-law and my sister
Yeah.
are both married to people that they met through online dating.
Yeah.
So, yeah, successful.
It's a thing.
It definitely works.
Yeah, it does work. And as one of Rochelle's people that was helping with the
Oh,
swiping.
yeah.
Yeah.
She was one of my swipers.
Yeah.
That was good times. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would be like, what? People do this? Because I never was on the things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also interesting just to see what your friends are attracted to and what they're not attracted to. You
Yeah.
know, there's someone for everyone.
It's wild out there.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
All right. Another singleness dating question is, how does one deal with the loneliness of becoming single due to widowhood after 48 years of marriage? And how does one avoid getting involved with the wrong person just to end that loneliness?
Yeah.
Yeah, without going into a lot of detail on this, something very similar to that happened in a relationship relatively close to me, where someone had been married for a very, very long time. The spouse passed away. There was not only loneliness, but there was also some financial challenges that created a space where this person kind of jumped into a marriage older. I mean, these are senior citizen people, and it's been a mess. And so I appreciate, first of all, just the being aware that that's a potential pitfall. If you're asking that question, you are aware that that is a pitfall. And so, some of the things that we've already talked about, just, being intentional, being somewhat cautious. And even though you're older, you may feel like you don't have enough time to take your time, but you really need to take your time, because the dynamic is just as important as if you were younger and entering into a relationship. And the same things that Rochelle just talked about on online dating are the same types of things that you need to be asking around a relationship when you're older. And then there's other dynamics, like it is important to look at some of those financial pieces, because it gets exponentially complicated when you get to a place where, there's Medicare and Medicaid and all these dynamics that can become realities that have to get navigated. The financial picture of the person that you're engaging with can dramatically impact your ability to get help and care for some of those things. So just being cautious and moving slow, making sure there's value alignment. And, I think there are other ways to overcome loneliness, and that's, engaging in your community, your faith community. My mom found she got involved at the senior center towards the end of her life, and it was so good for her. And she started to connect with some friends on a regular basis. And it was, my mom really struggled with loneliness the last 5 or 6 years of her life. And when she started engaging, like I could notice a real difference in my mom's outlook on life as she was engaging with people. And so, like, find other avenues. You don't have to get married to cure loneliness. And I know plenty of people who are married who are lonely.
Yeah.
So, it's not the cure all.
Yeah.
So,
And on the financial side of that, like, just being taken advantage of
100%.
Like, yeah, don't get into the wrong relationship where everything that you worked so hard for all of your life is gone in
Yeah.
a second because because of that. That would be devastating.
Right.
And for your family
Yeah.
too. That kind of leads us right into the aging parents topic, actually. Just a couple of questions here. When and how do I have conversations about where they are financially? Jamie, I know you talked about this with your mom. You had
Yeah.
a great conversation with your mom around this topic. So they kind of caveated this with, I don't want to come off as insensitive, but I also want to be prepared for what
Yeah.
I might need to do. Can you talk about that for just a
Yeah,
second?
Robin talked about it a little bit too on the podcast around aging parents. So he gave some really good insight on that. And I'd mentioned this too, but one of the resources that I was looking at when I was preparing for that message gave the 40-70 rule, which I just think is super helpful. It's when you turn 40 or when your parents turn 70, you should have the talk, not the birds and the bees, but the finances. You got to have the talk. You gotta sit down and walk through those complexities. Robin talked about how his parents put him on all of their accounts, which could be super, super helpful. And he also talked about how there has to be trust and all the things that are around that. But just some of those tips. You want to have the medical directives and the powers of attorney, and and it can be very helpful to at least have your will in place and a plan in place, and to be transparent enough. Like, I know there's a lot of secrecy that goes around some of that stuff, and it feels weird. But as my counselor says, don't make it weird. It doesn't have to be weird. Yeah. You should talk about those things because they are very important. So
we even have great church merch that says "Don't make it
weird."
weird."
Yeah, I sent one of those shirts to my counselor because I told him that he made it to one of our shirts, so he was very pleased with that.
Another question that's kind of along that line is, but it's from a senior citizen, actually, says, as a senior citizen, how do I know when it's time to give up my home, driver's license, financial management? But I think it's more, like you said, the 70 rule, but that's not necessarily that home and driver's license piece.
Right. I was talking to someone not very long ago, and they are senior citizens, and they're at a spot where it's trying to navigate some of that with a spouse. And one of the things that they said to me that I thought was super helpful was I want someone to be looking out for me. I don't want to be the one that's making that call, which requires a lot of humility to say that, because losing your capacity to drive is one of those things that many seniors are just very afraid of. My mom drove right up to the end, probably shouldn't have. So having the perspective that, like, I want to have someone I'm going to invite someone to speak into my life in that kind of way, whether that's an adult kid or whether maybe it's a senior friend who's a little younger than you or something like that. I just think there's a lot of wisdom there to say, like, I want someone to have eyes on me for those kinds of decisions, because chances are, if you're at a place where you shouldn't be driving, you're probably not even at that place where you should be making that call. Like, you need someone else to be able to speak into your life, and it requires just a tremendous amount of humility to invite someone to speak into that type of space.
Yeah. I knew of a grandparent who would go annually and just do a driver's test once they reached a certain age, because they didn't want, once they were told, like, oh, no, you probably shouldn't be driving anymore, then they wanted to just be done.
And there are driver safety courses that, so that's not a bad idea if you want to do the self-assessment thing. do some of those driver safety courses
Yep.
On a more regular basis and just see how you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But then you have to be willing to follow through on it
Right.
and not live in denial, which is
Yep.
denial is a very powerful thing.
It is.
So we have one more. Did you guys have anything on that?
Oh, no.
No.
That's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more family role and dynamic as we wrap up this conversation, and it is, what does submission look like in marriage?
It's such a good question.
It's a good
Go ahead,
one.
Doug.
Yeah.
I have something to share, but you might do a better job sharing it
no.
than me.
I love that one passage where you have to remind me the reference, but it's the whole family
Ephesians
commitment,
5.
Ephesians 5.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts by saying, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ.
Yep.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, and then it goes into each dynamic of
Yep.
that. And I think that umbrella statement, submit to one another, is really the dynamic. And it's really cool because I was actually listening to somebody teach on this not that long ago. And it was like one of the early church fathers. And they were talking about it. And he said, if you read it under that umbrella, it seems kind of crazy at first. Even like fathers submitting to your kids. What is that? Wait a second, I'm submitting to my children? But if you really play it out in my mind, it is. It means that I have to listen to my son, even though he's much younger than me, because he's coming from a place where he's saying something or doing something that matters to him. And I could easily blow it off and say, but no, you submit to me, you listen to me. I'm going to tell you everything to do. But it means I'm not listening to him anymore, and I'm not allowing him to influence my decisions in a healthy way. By no means does he make all the rules in the house, and he doesn't say when he eats dessert and when he doesn't. But I do allow him to have such an important influence in my life because it helps me to further that relationship. And I think that's that umbrella statement: submit to one another, be there for each other, serve one another, love one another, and to the level that Jesus loved us, we love the others in our household. And it's the household and the church household as well.
Yeah.
And that dual submission is very important.
Yeah, the kingdom of heaven is a race to the bottom rung.
Yeah.
And if you're having conversations about how do I make a person submit to me, chances are you're not living out the biblical principles well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like if you have to tell someone you're in charge, you're probably not in charge. It's the same kind of thing. And Jesus modeled for us, the washing of the feet of the disciples, and then said, go and do the same. The one who loves the most is the one who serves the most. That's not just at church, that is at home. So, you're serving, like, put on your servant's hat, not your submit to me hat. And then you won't, if you are the greatest servant in your home, you won't have to have a conversation about
Right.
submission.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. Well, that's a great
Beautiful.
place
Yeah.
to end.
Yeah.
And it really is beautiful. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful picture of like
Yeah.
Jesus working through us,
Yes.
and that sense that he elevates all of us, and at the same time we humble ourselves to
Yeah.
allow him to be seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's perfect. And with that, we're going to invite you all to go be love and join us back here next Sunday as we start a brand new series called Holy, Holy, Holy. And we're going to be looking at all of the ways that we can follow our holy Lord and be holy in our own lives.
Yeah.
So we hope that you will join us on campus at 9 and 10:45. And if you can't make it here, you can watch at 1 o'clock on YouTube. And we will see you next week.